This month, I figured for the workshop that I'm going to be teaching, um, that I would talk a little bit about the creative side of power in breaking. I don't think a lot of people really take advantage of the amount of creativity that can come from power. I think we were taught, especially when I was younger growing up, I was taught that power is just something to do to add into your round, or to learn some flares, or to throw out some mills, to get really good at mills. Which in some cases, yes, it's completely true. We should be good at doing power. We should master any kind of power, any basic power that we have. Where we're at today versus where I was at, we didn't really have one-handed air flares that categorized itself into almost generic power. And when I talk about generic power, I'm talking about power that anybody can do. So if I wanted to go out there and learn a one-handed air flare, I can go learn a one-handed air flare and compete with it, and nobody can say anything about it, which is extremely hard to do. That's basically where we're at, advanced level. I know there's a lot of young kids out there that are showing that they can. I know when I was first starting, I started around 13 years old, and I was considered a kid in the community because there wasn't that many little kids breaking. Today we have 4-year-olds doing one-handed air flares. So things have changed a lot. But the reason why I talk about things like this is because there is a separation between the amount of skill it takes to learn a move and the amount of skill it takes to create something. Do you want to do something that everybody else is doing, or do you want to set yourself apart and to be in that 1% of the category of people that create? And that's where you're going to separate yourself. It's amazing to do one-handed air flares. It's amazing to do 1.5 and the crazy amount of moves, and it takes a lot of skill. So it's nothing taking away. If you guys want to do power, by all means, learn power. Do it as much as you want. I know how fun it is. I've done and have learned basically almost every single power move that you can think of when I was competing. But I think what will set you apart from people, which is what a lot of people want to do, is to kind of find a separation between how can I be different than this guy. That's the main focus that you want if you want to get known, if you want to get your name out. You want to be your own character. So what you should be focusing on is how can you be different from other people. Now, that's not saying not to go and learn these moves. I think every move, which I'll get into later, there is a meaning for every move. If we're learning something, what I'm going to talk about is hand hops. I think hand hops are probably the most important move that anybody beginning should probably learn. It's not saying you have to, but if you're curious and you're really interested in learning any air type power or anything up top, I think hand hops are the tier where you start at. That's where you start to learn balance. That's where you start to build muscle and anything up top. So moves are, when we talk about power moves, we don't just learn a power move for the move itself. I'm not just learning flares to go out in a competition and just do 5 flares. If I'm going out in a competition and I'm doing 5 flares, that really is not doing anything for me at all, to be honest. Coming from a judge's perspective, if I see you go out and do 5 flares versus somebody that goes out and they transition differently, we'll even say a basic transition of a flare, swipe, flare, I would probably view the flare, swipe, flare, if they're both equally as clean, the flare, swipe, flare, I would view that a little bit better than you just going out and doing 5 flares. There are a variety of it. I think if we're going to be doing multiple moves in a row, there has to be another level to it. I've seen people do amazing mills, but they have to be, amazing windmills to be doing 10 windmills in a row. If you're not doing anything other than 5 basic windmills in a row, well, then the person that is doing something more original or more creative by doing mill, halo, mill, I'm most likely going to be in favor of giving it to that person for a power category if I am judging that way. And not even talking about competition, but I think setting yourself apart from other people is just, it's different when we start thinking about transferring out of power moves. So that's where the big creativity side of breaking comes from. Now, when we're talking about being creative in power, this doesn't mean to be, we got to think about creativity and breaking in, not just in power, but in how we think about creativity and all around in breaking. So this goes from like footwork to tops to burns, anything in that category. If we are creating, it has to be dope. Now, I'm not saying it has to be dope. If you guys don't care about people, what they say about you, or about making it far in competitions, or just the way that people are viewing you, I do whatever you want to do. Okay, I'm in no way of saying that breaking is constricting and they're telling you can't do this. Just know that if you are going out there and you're being very original and it's a little bit on the weird side, you may get some criticism back. So just be able to handle criticism, because that's just what breaking is. There's a lot of opinions everywhere, so just be prepared for it. So with that being said, talking about creative power, when we are going into the creative side, remember not to take it too far off into, or where people are questioning if we are breaking. We got to keep the structure to breaking. But when we think about power, we have to think about power as we do with footwork, right? The same with like us learning a 6-step for the first time. We are learning 6 steps that is helping us transition into other steps. It's a foundational structure. It is a pillar of what we are learning on what footwork is based around. All right. So when we're talking about power, it's almost the same aspect. I think people get flares, right? People get flares and they think, okay, I got flares. I'm going to use flares in the competition. I can't wait. Realistically, as you grow up in breaking, you realize that you shouldn't just be going out there and doing 5 flares and getting up and getting out. It's okay to do that. I'm not telling you can't do that. But as you advance up and you grow into breaking, there is a difference between somebody going out and doing 5 flares versus you going out and doing a flare into something very original, into something else. You can be saving a lot of energy. If somebody's coming out at me and they're doing 5 flares, there's nothing more to that than you're doing a couple flares. So what's going to kind of hinder you in the long run is you're wasting your energy and stamina doing 5 flares when the other person is coming out and they have 1 flare into something very original and they have all the energy in the world left. So just remember that, energy is something to think about also when you are battling, whether it is in a cipher or in the competition. The way that you are ending is very impactful to people watching or the battle itself. You start strong and you should be ending strong. So if you're going out there and you're doing 5 flares and you're wasting energy and the end of your round looks very tired, it's not a good look. So more focus should be on the creative side, which is going to, 1, save you energy, and 2, just it builds into your own character. It's your own style, and having your own style is just the most amount of respect that you're going to be getting. If you have a dope original style that you're sticking to, you're going to get more respect for doing that than you are for wasting energy just doing 5 flares in a row. So there is a difference between doing this. And again, I'm not telling you guys not to do 5 flares in a row, but if you guys are being smart about it, if you guys want to level up in the next way, that is the next level that you're going to take. So something that I'll go over, right? I'll give you guys an example. So we can do 5 flares in a row, right? Or I can take it, I'll give you guys an example of something that I created with like a flare and like the transition out of it, okay? So talking about doing, 5 flares in a row or a transition out of a flare. We can keep flares, right? Flares are basic. If we're doing 5 flares in a row, there's nothing coming out of this besides, hey, you're doing a basic flare. Anybody in the world can do that. Or we make a transition up coming out of a flare. When we talk about transitions from power, going back to where I'm talking about footwork, right? Talking about 6-step, where we have 6 steps. The way I think you should be thinking about power is almost the same way that you think about doing a 6-step. A flare is not just a flare. A flare is a bunch of different motions, a bunch of different pieces of, that build up into a flare. There's different positions that you're in that you can transfer into, that you can transfer out of. And it's the same thing when we're talking about halos. And halos is another one that I want to go over as well, but that will be for another future video. But when we're talking about, I'm giving you guys an example right now, just using flares. When we are talking about doing flares, we should think about this the same as windmills. We should think about this the same as air flares. Should think about this the same as halos. Any kind of power move, we should think that it is more than just the move itself. So it's not just the flare. It's the beginning of the flare. It's the back of the flare. It's the side of the flare. It's the 2 o'clock of the flare. It's the 7 o'clock of the flare. There's different positions. There's different levels of a flare. Some people, which is where we get into people doing elbow flares, where they're just on their elbows and they're doing flares. But transition-wise, going into and out of flares will make your flare more impactful, or will make it more meaningful, or just in general, just more creative. So example, something that I created a while ago, a long time ago, just simple transition of doing a flare into more of a flow of a footwork. I can't even say footwork, but I'd say more of a flow of a transition going that I can get into footwork from. So when we talk about positions, right? Now, normally a flare, we do a single rotation. We start from the back, we do a flare, and we go all the way to the back. So we start from the back, and we end in the back. But we have all these different positions that we're in that we can stop in and we can transfer out of. People tend to think, okay, I got to do one full flare, and then from the back, I got to do something out of it, or I got to do something from the reset, right? There is no reset in power. You can literally reset. You got to start to think that you can reset in any part of you doing that move in the middle of. Again, something that is a blow up to people is what I call the oh damn factor. Okay. And when I say like the oh damn factor, I mean, in your head, somebody does something that your mind is not expecting to do. So usually when people are doing amazing big power moves, your mind is not expecting people to be, oh, damn, like this is crazy. I didn't expect this guy to be pulling that out, right? Now, you can give that same, oh, damn, I didn't expect that to happen from just a simple transfer because of the way that you're going into something or out of it. So that oh, damn factor, maybe it's not as big as somebody doing something physical, but the oh, damn factor is still there even if you're doing something that's smaller, which is, to me, the same level of effect that you're going to get. If you're getting somebody to say, oh, damn, and it's something called out of just they're not expecting it, it's the same factor to me. So again, talking about the flare situation. Yeah, so the way I would think about flares is slowly, what I do from time to time, if I am ever in a rut and I'm like, okay, what can I do out of the flare? Like, what positions can I get in? I would take it step by step. So coming from the back, we're here, right? Next position that we would be in. So if I am going to kick, right? Technically, this is a position here, okay? So if we're going from this position, we can start to think about, okay, what can I do from this position, right? Because at some point in a flare, you're going to get back to this position, right? But I'm going to skip this position, okay? So if I'm skipping this position, the next step obviously would be we kick our leg up, legs come up, they come around, and then we're into this position, right? Skipping the whole front of it. So if I'm in this position, obviously I started to think, okay, what can I do with this? I used to do this for me and my crew. It was just something more traditional, more of our like style. I used to do a footwork move a lot when I was a kid, where I would go from here and I would go from here, right? So it's almost like a hook, but it's very smooth that I used to do, right? So I stopped doing it because I did it too much, right? But I kept it from time to time. So I took that move and I added it into this flare part, right? So I would do the first part of the flare, okay? So which got me thinking, right? So I took it move by move, section by section. So I got into here and I thought, okay, what if I just add this old footwork move that I used to do that I don't really do anymore, right? Because I'm already in this position. So from this position, so the flare would come up, I'd come from here, and then I added this footwork move in, right? Which is basically just a hook to kind of like a pop off, okay? So adding that transition together, it would look something like this. Okay? Which is how I got this transition of that. Now, it's not something that's big, but the transition is different than what most people were doing. So something little like that will be able to be creative enough for it to make it your own and to make it your own style. So this is what I'm talking about when we're doing power and we're thinking about transitions and we're thinking about ways of doing stuff into stuff and ways of doing stuff out of it. We have to be creative in that process where we're not doing what everybody else is doing. I'm not telling you guys not to do it, but if you're trying to stand out, if you're trying to make your own style up, little things like this, even though it doesn't seem like that much, it makes it very impactful, especially when going out and showing off at a competition, showing off in the middle of a cipher. You want to kind of solidify your own style so other people will notice you. So little things like this, making your own signature transitions in and out of power, is really going to help you guys do that up.